UFC Fight Night, Sergei Pavlovich versus Curtis Blaydes. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris. As usual, fight by fight breakdowns and predictions. From that betting perspective specifically, we want to let you know which are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action toward the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we're going to want to hear from you in the comments. Now, for this UFC Fight Night event, we have 12 fights overall, 7 of them on the prelims, 5 of them on the main card. Let's get started with fight number 1 of our prelims. We are looking at Brady Hiestand versus Danaa. For Brady Hiestand, he had that unanimous decision win over Fernie Garcia back in November. Striking not the best. He fights from the outside. He picks his shots kind of one at a time. Definitely much more of a wrestler. Good takedown entries. He's landed 9 takedowns in his last 2 fights. Just speaking to that, his top control is there. The ground and pound is pretty solid. He's good at improving position as well. Really crafty, really able to keep it on the ground, and still very young, still just 23 years old. So I'm expecting improvements on a fight over fight basis with him. And he's taking on Danaa, who's on a 2-fight losing streak, who lost to Kyung Ho Kang back in June. Good fluid movement on the feet as a kickboxer. He's got good hands. He's got good lateral movement. I like his fakes and feints. I like his distance control. The leg kicks as well, and I like his combinations. Really technically sound. Got to respect his power. 7 of his 12 wins are via KO, TKO. But some of his pitfalls, not really the best at handling pressure. Just 66% takedown defense as well, which is also very relevant for this fight. Especially that he hasn't really gone up against any wrestlers. So let's see how he handles a wrestler in Brady Hiestand. Striker versus wrestler, of course, in this situation, and that's very similar to Brady Hiestand's last fight. What I'm looking for in this fight is how does Danaa handle the takedown attempts? Got to go all the way back to 2019. I'm thinking about his fight versus Alatang Hey Lee. He was smothered in that 3rd round specifically, and it probably cost him the fight. I think it was a split decision, if I'm not mistaken. So I'm actually liking Brady Hiestand here. I think it's a bad matchup for Danaa. I think that, of course, we have to acknowledge him as the better striker. He's the much more dangerous striker. So let me be clear in that. But I'm anticipating Hiestand, wearing on Danaa, landing those takedowns, finding enough control time to put rounds in his favor, even as the striking exchanges don't go his way for as long as it stays on the feet. But I think he finds that takedown ability sort of early enough to avoid the threat, to avoid the early fight threat, wear on him, and then be able to bank 2 rounds in his favor. So I'm going to start with the underdog. I'm going to start with the wrestler. Brady Hiestand is my pick.
Yeah, this is actually a really, really hard fight because it's a styles fight. We have Brady, who's going to be the much better wrestler, who has good cardio. He can do it over 3 rounds, and he's going to be able to get takedowns against Danaa Batgerel. On the feet, but Batgerel is going to have the heavy hands. He's going to be able to finish this fight. Brady has been dropped. What was that fight? He was dropped against. Let me pull it up here. Fernie Garcia. He was dropped against Ricky Tercios. He got finished by Chad and Helliger pre-UFC. But if you actually look at Brady Hiestand's record pre-UFC, this might be the worst pre-UFC work for a fighter that's in the UFC. This guy, his first fight, fought an 0-2 guy. Then he fought an 0-0 guy, fought an 0-4 guy, an 0-6 guy. Then he lost to a 9-5 guy, Chad Anheliger, who's in the UFC. And then he beat a 0-12 guy. And then he got put on the Ultimate Fighter, and some easy fights. He did good. He got to the final, the finale. But pre-UFC, I'm not even sure how he got on that show. But I can't trust him because as good as his wrestling is, there is moments where he strikes with these fighters. And I think that Danaa Batgerel has that power, has that touch of death. If Garcia can get him down, if Chad can finish him or get the refs to stop the fight, you got to think Danaa can put a beating on him if he can get one moment. I think all he needs is one moment, and he can put this guy away with that power. So I'm going to go Danaa Batgerel, but betting wise, I wouldn't do it. Style wise, it's a fight where one guy is really, really good in one area, the other guy is really, really good in the other area. So it's a matter of who can make the fight go to their area or keep it in that area the most. So it's a really, really hard fight because we don't know, we can't predict that at this point. But because one guy has such a big advantage here, the other one has such a big advantage there, you can't make a bet on that. But for the channel, I'm going to go with the Danaa Batgerel using his power to get the finisher.
Second fight of our prelims, Priscila Cachoeira versus Karine Silva. For Cachoeira, 2-fight winning streak. She beat Ariane Lipski back in August. Really just has that one style, but she is pretty dangerous in that style. In that she's a pressuring, brawling type of fighter. Gonna throw heavy hands. She's gonna stay right in front of you. She's gonna look to control center. Doesn't really set things up either. Kind of just stalks you down and looks for the power. She will kind of feint a jab here and there. She'll throw a calf kick here and there, but usually it's all power from her. She is a liability elsewhere. She's a liability on the ground. She doesn't really have the best takedown defense, doesn't really have the best submission defense, doesn't really have the best IQ on the ground in general. And in terms of her cardio, I feel okay with it, or at least her ability to remain dangerous throughout the entire fight, even if she does slow down a little bit. Pretty tough and definitely gonna fight for your money from that perspective. Karine Silva submission victory over Poliana Botello back in June. She's on a 6-fight winning streak now. She has a 100% finish rate. So you look at 15 wins, eight TKO, 7 submission. The striking's good activity, good diversity. She fights at range, effective switch stance as well. She can also be explosive. The power is there. I mean, again, more than half of her wins are via KO, TKO. The jab is pretty long. She's going to have 2-inch reach advantage that she's going to take advantage of in this one. Loves that overhand straight punch as well. And she's also a strong grappler, just rounding out the skill set. She's good at finding those submission attempts. Again, just under half of her wins are via submission. So, again, has that well-roundedness in her game. A lot of people are going to go Karine Silva on this one, at least in my opinion. I think her striking's more pure. I think she's the better overall kickboxer. Of course, she has the submissions. We know that Cachoeira is a liability in that department. But I'm going to change things up again. I'm going to roll with Cachoeira on this fight for a few reasons. I think Karine Silva, she has power, but she fights from range. So Cachoeira is going to be able to fight the style of fight that she wants, where she's able to push the pace, the pressure. She's able to be the fighter coming forward. And I don't think she's going to face much resistance in that department. We know Karine Silva has, of course, the submission advantage, but what I have not seen from her is the wrestling to actually bring it down to the mat. Cachoeira, of course, has not shown the highest IQ, so she has still found her way to the ground in the fights that she has had, but I don't really see Karine Silva landing a clean takedown in this one. So that could mean that it stays on the feet. I think that Cachoeira is more, I think she can stay dangerous for a lot of this fight. I think she can land the bigger shots. I think she can potentially hurt Karine Silva, and if not, just sort of give her a pace and a pressure that she has yet to see at this level. So I'm gonna go again with an underdog, Priscila Cachoeira, but it is women's MMA. Karine Silva is the smarter pick, but I am thinking that there's some underdog value here on Cachoeira enough for me to actually make her my pick. So going with the underdog again on this one, Priscila Cachoeira.
Okay, so with Priscila, she's gonna have that power. I think just based on her tenure in the UFC, she has that. She's gonna have that puncher's chance. If you go through her record, you can see that she got the knockout against Lipski first round. Against Ji Yeon Kim, she really lost that fight. She got gifted a decision. She lost to Jillian Robertson. She finished Mazany with strikes. She finished Dobson with strikes. And then she lost to Luana Carolina, Molly McCann, Valentina Shevchenko. So in the UFC, her wins, her real wins have not gone to decision. So in this fight, I think she's going to need a finish here. As far as the grappling goes, I'm sorry. As far as the striking goes, yes, I think Priscila has the more power, and she's tenacious with her zombie approach, just marching fighters down. And she's willing to eat a shot, take a shot, right? And she'll give a shot. So she's gonna have that reach advantage as well, I believe. Just looking at their fight video, who has the higher reach?
Technically, Karine Silva.
Okay, so she's not gonna have the reach. So, but in this fight though, I think she will have the power that she could definitely get a knockout in this fight. Grappling wise, I believe Karine has a big advantage. Unlike Harris, I actually think she does have takedowns. On the Contender Series, she shot for a really good takedown against Q Hui Yan, and a really good shot. It's just Yan was so physical, was strong, was able to sprawl on it. But a fighter like Priscila is getting taken down. She doesn't have good takedown defense. She's been taken down by fighters that aren't even that good in takedowns in the UFC. I could see Karine going to the takedown early in this fight. It's going to be their all fight. And I see her just winning by submission. You're locking up that Darce again, getting a win here.
All right, let's move on to fight number 3. Francis Marshall, William Gomis, featherweight fight here. For Francis Marshall, he beat Marcelo Rojo back in December. He's still undefeated, 7-0. Boxer, wrestler type of fighter. I wouldn't say the striking's amazing, but he does have a solid jab. He has good power. Combinations are there as well. The technique is pretty clean as well. Can't complain about that. And he's going to give you a good, consistent pace. His game is predicated on his wrestling, even though he is a boxer wrestler type of fighter. I feel like it is his wrestling that is his strong suit. Takedown entries are solid. The top control is good. Good at finding submissions as well. 4 of those 7 wins are via submission. I think all of them are via rear naked choke. So that tells you that he's good at taking the back, good just overall at maneuvering on the ground. Let's see how he does in this one against William Gomis, a fighter who has worked on his ground game, but he's a striker. He's a southpaw. He's on a 9-fight winning streak now after a majority decision win over Jarno Arens back in September. Pretty clean with his striking. The technique is pretty clean as well. The precision is there. He's really patient, sometimes too patient. Sometimes he's not active enough. Sometimes he does not throw enough combinations. We see the significant strikes landed per minute as low as they are. He's got good takedown defense. He can also land takedowns. Again, it's a part of his game that he has learned. I've seen him rely on that cage work, rely on that takedown to sort of swing rounds in his favor, especially if you watch his last fight. So I think that addition to his game can make this a really hard fight to predict because both of these guys can do a bit of everything. Gomis, to me, is the better pure striker, but Marshall can be effective with the pressure. I'm also expecting a much higher pace from Francis Marshall with respect to the striking. Marshall, to me, is the better wrestler, regardless of Gomis. Working on that part of his game, I think Marshall is the better pure wrestler. Gomis, of course, has good takedown defense, good wrestling of his own. You can make a case for either fighter here. I wouldn't say good wrestling, sorry. Decent wrestling on his own, of his own, I should say. Again, you can make a case for either fighter, but I'm going to side with Francis Marshall on this one. I think, again, he is the better wrestler, whereas it's something that Gomis has learned after the fact, after his after his MMA career has launched, I should say. Marshall also, again, he should be able to find those takedowns despite Gomis having historically good takedown defense. He should get the better of the wrestling exchanges. And on the feet, I like the pace from Francis Marshall. I like the pressure that I'm anticipating from Francis Marshall. And unless he gets clipped, I think he should be able to swing the rounds in his favor with activity, if nothing else. So again, unless Gomis clips him, which is very possible, he's a precision, more pure striker. I believe that it is Marshall's pace and wrestling that should get the job done for him. So I actually feel pretty decent about Marshall in this spot, but that risk is always there on the side of Gomis. Marshall would be my pick nonetheless.
Yeah, for me, this is a 50-50 fight. Both guys well-rounded fighters. On the feet, I give Marshall the hands, man. I think he has the better boxing, the better better boxing work. William Gomez, I think he has the better movement, the better footwork, and I think he has the better kicks, much better kicks. Marshall doesn't even throw kicks. So that could be something in this fight if Gomis can actually target those low kicks, body kicks. He does a lot of spinning kicks. So that's an advantage he has in this fight. But again, Marshall has that boxing, that equalizer. Like Harris says, he has that pressure, the activity, the work rate. He's a young guy, so he's gonna be able to go the 3 rounds and give you a good fight. So for me, this is a hard fight because both guys have their strengths. When you look at the grappling, that's an area that I think Francis has the better wrestling, the better entries on the takedowns, the better work getting takedowns. But I do like Gomis being the taller guy, having the leverage. He might be able to get some takedowns. Just being the bigger guy come fight night, he might be able to get some takedowns in this fight. For me, it's 50-50. I was going back and forth. The value, though, on Gomis, I can't ignore. I do think this is going to be a close fight. Both guys, again, are well-rounded. It could be who catches who first, just like the Brandon Royval fight versus Mateus Nicolau last week, right? So when you have well-rounded guys like that, when they're pretty close in their skills, it can go either way. And in this fight, I'm going to go with the underdog. William Gomis moving around, countering, throwing some kicks, getting the kicks going. And I think he has a good shot here to pull off the upset. So I'm going to go the underdog, William Gomis, to get the win.
Fourth fight, Mohammed Usman versus Junior Tafa. This fight's a pick'em in the heavyweight division. Usman, of course, brother of Kamaru. He beat Zach Pauga back in August. Not the biggest heavyweight. He fights at about 235 pounds. A lot of fakes and level changes to go along with a decent regular jab that he uses as part of his attack. The striking technique is not the cleanest, but he's got big power, unsurprisingly, for a heavyweight. With that, especially with that looping overhand hook, that's a part of his game. He's going to use that approach to shoot for takedowns from time to time. He's going to be very explosive, but to be quite honest, beyond that, just talent level is not really that high with him. I think he's quite limited in what he can do in terms of what he's shown us. Bit hittable, doesn't really set up the offense, but he has that equalizer, which is the big power, which could land on anyone, which is why we say heavyweight fights, of course, are heavyweight bewares. And he's facing Junior Tafa, of course, brother of Justin Tafa, 4-0 at this point, making his UFC debut. He was in Glory Kickboxing before switching over to MMA. All 4 of his wins in MMA are via KO, TKO. Hasn't really fought anyone, though, of course, in terms of MMA, really just still getting started. And, I mean, truthfully, haven't really been able to find much MMA footage out there since it's only 4 fights that he has. But stylistically, even in MMA, very true to that kickboxing background that he has. Big hands, big power. He can take a shot. He can land that big kick. Again, really just true to that kickboxing style. And again, he's not the biggest heavyweight either, weighing in right around 235 pounds in his last fight. I don't want to spend too much time on this fight, though, prediction-wise, because I think it's a low-level fight. That alone is going to tell you anything can happen. It's a heavyweight fight, heavyweight beware. That alone will tell you that anything can happen. So you bring those 2 factors together, you imagine why it's a pick'em at that point. I think that Tafa is going to be a lot more dangerous on the feet. Stylistically, I think he's going to be able to do more with his striking. Usman can resort to at least a perceived wrestling advantage that he should have in this one. But despite that, I think this fight stays standing. I think it'll be about who catches who first in true heavyweight fashion. I'm going to side with Junior Tafa in this one because, again, he's the better striker and he's also a big puncher on top of that. So if it's a matter of who catches who first, my thought is that Junior Tafa is going to be the one to catch Mohammed Usman first. So Junior Tafa is going to be my pick, but by way of low-level fight and by way of heavyweight fight, I can't put any confidence behind this, but I think Junior Tafa, I'm okay with making him my pick for the channel.
Yeah, this is another one of those fights where one guy is the much better striker in Junior Tafa, and one guy is the much better wrestler in Mohammed Usman. Now, Mohammed Usman isn't a great wrestler like his brother, but compared to Justin Tafa, he's going to be the better guy wrestling. He should be able to get the fight to the mat. And if he goes that route, you would be upset if you pick Tafa if he's able to do this over a couple of rounds. And Tafa can't get back to his feet because he's mainly a kickboxer, looking to keep it on the feet. Good striking, good boxing, good kicks. He's going to be able to knock out Usman if it stays there long enough. But if Usman goes the wrestling route, there could be issues, right? And if he's able to do this over a couple of rounds, Junior Tafa is going to have a real hard time getting back to his feet. If he can't get back to his feet, he's just going to lose, even though he's the better guy. Usman is very sloppy on the feet, wings his punches, throws wide, but he does have power. It is the heavyweight division. So again, both guys could win this fight. Now, Mohammed, if he does go the wrestling route, if he doesn't finish it in the first round, he's just going to gas. That's what I think is going to happen. So I'm going to go with Junior Tafa. If Usman doesn't go the takedown route and wants to strike, I like Junior in that spot. But even if Usman does wrestle, I'm not sure he can do this for periods of time. Watch his fight on PFL against that big guy, man. He was a big favorite as well, Usman. And he lost me and a lot of people money that day, right? And on our parlays, and he gassed, and it was a joke. So if he does want to wrestle, he's just gonna gas out. And at that point, if Junior's still around, if he hasn't got submitted or hasn't been grounded out, Junior should knock him out on the feet. So I'm gonna go Junior Tafa here to get the win. But again, betting wise, you got to stay away from ones like these.
Fifth fight of our prelims, Karol Rosa versus Norma Dumont. We have a Brazilian showdown in the featherweight division, 145 pounds. Karol Rosa, majority decision win over Lina Landsberg. That was back in October. Keep in mind she had a point deducted in that fight, so when you say majority decision, it wasn't as close as it sounds. She has solid stand-up, Muay Thai style. She stays in the pocket. She's going to use a solid jab, pretty solid calf kick as well. She can strike first. She can play that counter striker role. She can put good combinations together. And she's a well-rounded fighter. She can land the takedowns as well. Pretty solid on top, has good activity, has strong ground and pound. And also, you know, the clinch game is there. So look for that clinch against the cage. Look for her to try to control. Look for her to try to keep you on the cage. Sort of that Holly Holmes style approach. She has that in her in certain moments. And she's going up against Norma Dumont, another really well-rounded fighter here who had a unanimous decision win over Daniel Wolf back in September. Dumont likes that switch stance. Dumont's pretty light on her feet. She likes that calf kick a lot in her own right. Good fakes, good in and out movement, good jab, and really solid combinations. Pretty fast striking comparatively to Karol Rosa. She's patient. She's really good with timing. And we can't underestimate her power. Good strong clinch against the cage as well. She's a grappling specialist. She's a ground specialist, so she can land that takedown. Both of these women can land that takedown, although neither of them really resort to it too often. Both of them are just over one takedown per fight. It's an interesting fight here. Interesting Brazilian showdown. We know that Karol Rosa is moving up to 145 pounds here. You know, higher level fight, right? Close fight on paper when you compare their skill sets. So you want to be careful with betting on either side of this one. And again, I can see why the odds are as close as they are. I'm going to side with Norma Dumont. And the reason for that is I think Dumont is very intentional in staying in this 145-pound weight class. I don't know if I can say the same for Karol Rosa. I haven't really followed her story leading up to this fight. You know, I know that Dumont wants that title shot, right? She looked back to form in her last fight. We know the division is thin, so the road to the title shot is really not that long. Karol Rosa definitely going to have a lot to offer, right? So, like, we can't ignore that. I do think Dumont will be able to get the better of her on the feet. Again, just going back to better timing, sort of quicker striking. I think Dumont's power is a real factor here as well. Karol Rosa was knocked down in her last fight versus Lina Landsberg. And, you know, anyone's fight in terms of who lands takedowns, I think they're both capable. I think they're both susceptible to giving up takedowns. So I think both of them can be effective in that area. But again, I think that Dumont, for me at least, is going to be the more trustworthy pick at this weight class. You know, we've seen Dumont underperform So keep that in mind. But I think she's also someone that sort of plays up to her level of competition. And I think she's gonna, I think I think the ego is a little bit at play as well. I think she's gonna be ready to defend the division and again put herself that much closer to a title shot in a very thin division. So I'm expecting Norma Dumont to defend her division from that perspective. I don't know if Karol Rosa is here to stay, but I don't think Karol Rosa gets the win. I think it's going to be a close fight, and I have Norma Dumont slightly pulling it out in her favor.
Yeah, this will be a good fight because similar strengths, similar abilities. Both can strike, both can grapple. We're gonna find out who's better in those areas on Saturday. This is a great fight. Now, when you break it down, though, when it comes to the wrestling, I do think Karol Rosa has the better entries on the takedowns. So I might give her a slight edge on the wrestling, but Dumont has good wrestling as well, and she's gonna be the bigger girl, big legs, like really big legs, big hips. So she's gonna be hard to take down. So it might not even matter here, but I will give the slight edge to Rosa, just having the better entries on the takedowns. Now, when I look at the striking, though, I do like. I think Norma Dumont is the better striker. I think she has a really good jab. If you watch her fight against Aspen Ladd, albeit it's Aspen Ladd who's not that good, but she was able to show a jab. Pretty much won the fight with a jab. And against Danielle Wolf, a professional, or I believe she's a boxer. I thought she was, but in that fight, she did a lot of work on the feet. She got some takedowns there as well, but she kept the fight on the feet and was actually putting a hurting on Danielle Wolf on the feet. Outstruck her in certain areas, landed some big shots, hurt her a couple of times with her power. And that's one thing that might matter in this fight because Rosa, again, like Harris mentioned, important you mentioned that she was dropped by Lena Landsberg. And I don't remember her dropping many people, Lena Landsberg. And Norma Dumont has way more pop than Lena Landsberg. And when you look at who they fought in the UFC, it's pretty. They came into the UFC around the same time, late 2019, 2020. They both came in around the same time. And the people that Karol Rosa has been matched against: Vanessa Mello, Jocelyn Edwards, Beth Carrera, Lena Landsberg. And when she was matched with aging Sarah McMahon, Sarah's legit, and Sarah was able to put in the work on her. But the UFC thought they were throwing her another bone because Sarah was old, but Sarah still had some of those physical gifts left. All the fighters she's fought, aside from Sarah, she had big advantages on those fighters in certain areas. And she was able to dictate those fights. If she wanted it to go to the ground, she could get it to the ground. If she wanted to stay on the feet, she could keep it on the feet. This is, when you look at Norma Dumont now, who she's fought in the UFC, Megan Anderson, Ashley Evans Smith, Felicia Spencer, that's a big one. Aspen Ladd at the time was 9-1. Danielle Wolf, that's a fight that Danielle is new to this, but because she kept it on the feet, it's pretty impressive that she was able to keep it on the feet with the boxer for a good amount of time and outstruck the boxer. So that was a good performance in that fight. Macy Chiasson came up, had the performance of her life. She looked way different, looked really big, fast, strong for that weight class. She looked like the bigger girl in that fight, even though she was moving up in weight. In this fight, size is going to be on Norma Dumont's side. She's going to be the bigger girl. I think she's going to be able to dictate where the fight goes. And in striking, I think she's the better boxer and has that pop. So I'm going to go Norma Dumont here to get the win. Who's the favorite? I know this was going back and forth.
Dumont started as the dog, but it looks like it has swung. It looks like it's swung to almost even money at this point. So I think money's coming in on Dumont, but
Okay.
she started off as a dog.
All right, let's go.
All right, so let's move on to fight number 6 of our prelims, Rani Yahya versus Montel Jackson. I don't think I need much time on this fight. Montel Jackson is a big favorite at -600. He had the unanimous decision win over Julio Arce back in November. Is on a 3-fight winning streak now. Methodical, technical, really well paced with his striking. He picks his shots well. He controls center, and definitely looking to consistently close distance. He's physically big and strong for the division. Really big hands, really good power. 3.5 takedowns as well at almost 70 or just over 70% accuracy, I should say. Strong wrestler offensively, has the really good takedowns that he can implement in his game. Rani Yahya, we know he's getting up there in age, right? 38 years old. 3-fight unbeaten streak now, though. Hasn't fought since November 2021, so it has been a while. He beat Kyung Ho Kang at that time. Kickboxing style on the feet, a lot of movement, bit of an awkward stand-up that makes him, hard to time. He's going to want the fight on the ground. He's a grappling specialist, second-degree black belt. He will pull guard if he needs to. Almost 3 takedowns per fight as well, though, right? So he can find those takedowns. He's going to look for multiple takedown attempts. Again, really just look to get the fight onto the ground by any means necessary. I mentioned Montel Jackson as a big favorite. Understandably, I think he should be a big favorite. I think he should be a pretty confident pick here. He should be fine pretty much everywhere with the striking, 4 inches in height, 8 inches in reach. Definitely going to take advantage of that. Going to be a lot more dangerous. Has a legitimate chance of hurting Rani Yahya and ending the fight pretty early. I think he's too big, too strong for Rani Yahya to land takedowns easily. He should be able to fight them off and keep it standing. He can probably land takedowns of his own, although I don't think he's going to want to. I don't really see where Rani Yahya wins this fight unless it's Montel Jackson making a mistake, right? Getting it to the ground and just not being ready to defend the submission, for example. So if that's Yahya's only chance, I don't see how Yahya wins this fight. Montel Jackson, pretty comfortable, minus 600. I understand it. He should get the job done.
Yeah, Montel Jackson all day, man. He's a new breed of fighters, good everywhere. Rani Yahya, he's old school, man. He's a jiu-jitsu specialist, kind of like a Hoist Gracie type of fighter, only good there, not good compared to other fighters in the UFC right now. He's not good in striking. He's not good in wrestling compared to UFC fighters right now. In this fight, Montel's gonna have an advantage everywhere except for the jiu-jitsu. So Rani Yahya needs to get this to the mat, and I don't see him getting it there. So I think Montel gets his win easily. Montel's gonna be looking for a performance bonus. When you get an opponent like Rani Yahya and you're Montel Jackson, in your sleep, you're thinking, before you go to sleep, you're thinking, I need that performance bonus, 50 grand. I have the perfect opponent in front of me. I just have to knock him out, and I have to make it look good. If you knock him out in the first round, it looks great. So I think he's gonna go for that first round knockout. And I think that's something you could look at. I haven't looked at the odds, but I do see Montel Jackson here getting the win pretty easily.
All right, let's look at the final fight of the prelims in that case. Ricky Glenn versus Christos Giagos. Lightweight fight here. Ricky Glenn hasn't fought since October 2021. He had that majority draw against Grant Dawson. At the time, he's a southpaw. He fights at distance. Really likes that low leg attack. Really patient, really poised, really consistent with his pace, consistent with his attack. Takedowns are not a part of his game, just 68% takedown defense on top of that. So, look for him to keep it on the feet. When he's taken down, he is going to give up a lot of control time. That could be very relevant in this fight versus Christos Giagos. But Giagos is on a 2-fight losing streak, right? No shame in his 2 losses, Arman Sarukian and Thiago Moises back in June. Switch stance fighter. He is introduced as a boxer wrestler. He's going to fight from the outside. A lot of fakes. He's going to use a decent jab, good wrestling as well. Like I mentioned, he has that chain wrestling approach with the body locks, with pressing you against the cage, with looking for that takedown by any means necessary. And looks like he can grapple as well to pair along with that wrestling. With Giagos, so it's interesting. He really just might not be a UFC level fighter. Despite tough losses on his resume, despite a good skill set on paper, he just might not be a UFC level fighter. So I'm okay with siding on with Ricky Glenn on this one. I'm definitely not confident. I would definitely not bet on Ricky Glenn. I just don't like his skill set from that perspective. But I'm looking at a fighter in Ricky Glenn who is, like I mentioned, more poised, more diverse with his striking. He should win the striking exchanges. And although Ricky Glenn can be taken down, like we saw with Grant Dawson, he's going to start stuffing those takedowns at some point. I don't love Glenn's style, like I mentioned. I don't think he really has a go-to path to victory, but I think he should get it done here as the higher IQ fighter Christos Giagos, 10 losses at this point. Comes to the UFC, loses a few in a row. Again, he just might not be a UFC level fighter. So I'm going to go with Ricky Glenn on this one. I cannot say I'm confident, but I'm basically going for poise and for IQ. So Ricky Glenn is my pick.
Yeah, for sure, man. I'm all over Ricky Glenn in this spot. When you look at Christos Giagos, his best win is probably Sean Soriano or Damir Hadzovic, and both guys are no longer in the UFC. And the Damir Hadzovic fight, that fight, I couldn't believe, probably the worst wrestler in Hadzovic was able to get some takedowns on Giagos in the second, or was it the third round? Very embarrassing for a wrestler to get taken down by that guy, a mainly striker. In this fight, he's fighting Ricky Glenn, who's pretty well-rounded. He's decent striking, grappling. He knows what to do. But when he's on his back, like Harris said, he kind of he's not that great with getting back up to his feet, but his strong suit is his cardio. He has really good cardio, and he does push a pace. If you don't finish him early, he's going to come back in the second and the third round. He's going to fight for your money. And again, Giagos hasn't really impressed me when he's fought in good fighters or fighters that are well-rounded. And Ricky Glenn here, I think, can put it on him as the fight goes on. I can see Glenn losing that first round, probably does, but Giagos doesn't have good cardio. And as the fight goes on, Ricky Glenn's just going to put on that pace, maybe get a 10-8 in one of those rounds, second or third round, maybe get a finish. But I definitely see Ricky Glenn piling it on after the first round.
Let's move on to our main card. As I mentioned, 5 fights on the main card. Fight number 1 is Jeremiah Wells versus Matthew Semelsberger. For Jeremiah Wells, he beat Court McGee back in June. Very explosive, looking to throw everything into his strikes. Introduced as a striker, he's physically strong, fights at a high pace, and really has that touch of death power. Also solid on the ground, right? Not the strongest wrestler per se, but he's, again, physically strong. He has good ground and pound if he can get you down. And he's also a BJJ black belt with 100% takedown defense. So again, it tells you that there is IQ there, even if he's not the actual strongest wrestler. You do have to ask yourself about his cardio. I mean, his fights are very short. He ends them very early. So let's see if Matthew Semelsberger can push him here. Semelsberger had a pretty good win, a good unanimous decision win over Jake Matthews back in December. Stand-up is decent. The kickboxing is solid. The combinations are there. He has power in his own right. And stylistically, he likes to put the pressure on. So expect him to be coming forward in most of his fights. Let's see what he does with Jeremiah Wells here. He's not afraid to engage in most of his fights. Again, let's see what happens with Jeremiah Wells here. And with Matthew Semelsberger, expect continuous forward pressure and the continuous pace out of him. He lands almost a takedown and a half per fight. His takedown accuracy is really high. Like he seems like he picks and chooses when to try to resort to the wrestling. Had 3 takedowns in his last fight, for example. So that tells you he can go to it when he wants to. And for Semelsberger, I mean, he's tough. You know, he's a power puncher. He's well-rounded. He's gonna, be not afraid to exchange. Again, just one of those tough fighters. I think this fight more than likely is going to end in a round 1 finish, though, on either side. I'm expecting a high action fight. I'm expecting Jeremiah Wells to catch Matthew Semelsberger pretty early in this fight. I think there's definitely underdog value on Matthew Semelsberger, or at least Semelsberger was an underdog. It looks like it's a pick'em now at this point. So I think people agree that there was value on Semelsberger as an underdog, but and I guess because of that, or I should say the reason for that is what I'm trying to say here, is because, again, we haven't seen Jeremiah Wells past that first round, whereas we know that Semelsberger can give you 3 rounds. He can fight for you, fight for your money. But again, you just can't ignore that touch of death power that Jeremiah Wells has. Semelsberger has survived a big puncher or two in his career, but I don't think he survives this one. Jeremiah Wells just is showing different levels of power in this welterweight division, and Semelsberger is going to give him the style of fight to let him get it done early again. So I'm looking at Jeremiah Wells to get this done, early finish. I think the what if doesn't even happen. I think the what if it goes past round 1, we're not going to see that. I think Jeremiah Wells gets him out of there in that first round.
Yeah, Jeremiah is a scary, scary guy, man. This guy, he definitely has a lot of strength, and he might be too strong for these guys in this division. Like he might be able to just dictate where the fights go. He does have good grappling, and he also has decent takedowns. On the feet, though, he doesn't have the best striking as far as technique, but he has a dangerous left hook that he comes after the right hook, and it catches fighters. They're not expecting that punch coming. He's knocking guys out, man, and I could see him knock out Semelsberger as well. But Semelsberger hasn't been dropped in his UFC fights, and the way he fights, he doesn't just lay on top of you. This guy's he's striking with you, and he's right in front of you, and he's fought guys like Jake Matthews, Morono, AJ Fletcher, Martin Sano, Chaos Williams, Jason Witt, Carlton Minus. Not one of these guys was able to knock him down. So his chin is definitely holding up. I don't believe he has been finished. I think in this fight, his cardio will show to be the better cardio, because the way Jeremiah Wells is built, I don't think he's gonna be able to do this for 3 rounds if they put on a pace in this fight. So if this fight has a fast pace, I think it does benefit Matthew Semelsberger. I think Matthew Semelsberger can take the shots. He might get hurt, but I think he can survive. And as the fight goes on, I think the power is going to slow down. Wells, he's 36 in decisions. I believe he's 2-2 in decisions. So he's 1-2, lost 2 when the fight goes to decisions. If I'm correct, I could be thinking about a different fighter, but I do think Semelsberger has some spots in the striking that he can exploit. Being the better striker, having the good counter shots, having good knockout power. And the guy's 36, man. He has to get chin checked at some point. And I think Matthew Semelsberger is going to land some shots. We'll find out how durable Jeremiah Wells is this Saturday. But I'm going to go with Semelsberger. I think he's the underdog. I think he avoids the power, does enough to keep it on the feet. And on the feet, I think Semelsberger is going to be the better guy over 3 rounds, because I don't think Wells probably knocks him out, but I don't think it's going to happen this Saturday. So I'm going to go Matt Semelsberger.
All right, second fight of the main card, Yasmin Lucindo versus Brogan Walker. Lucindo lost her debut to Jasmine Juregri back in August. Still just 21 years old. She's introduced as a striker, pretty light on her feet, yet she can be explosive and really throws a lot of combinations. She's going to fight from range, but not afraid to close that distance, engage, exchange with her opponent. The takedowns are also there. A bit of a chain wrestling approach when she decides to commit to it. Of course, we haven't seen it in her debut, but she does have that in her game. Decent top control to go along with that. And I mean, she's Brazilian, so unsurprisingly, she has good grappling to go along with that. Good IQ, good positional improvements. Just 2 wins via submission, so it's not exactly ending fights for her, but she is effective down there, and she is pretty well-rounded as a 21-year-old fighter. Brogan Walker lost to Juliana Miller back in August. She's a southpaw, but kind of lacks technique on the feet. The combinations aren't the best. Combinations aren't the cleanest, but she has an active jab hand. She likes to come forward. She likes to close distance. She'll keep the fight in close. She'll look to engage. We learned in her debut, which was, of course, the Ultimate Fighter finale, that her takedown defense is not the best. She is a black belt, so I don't think she's clueless down there, but not the best at getting back up, not the best at defending the takedown. And she is also coming down in weight here. So let's see if she's maybe stronger at defending those takedowns. But let me not waste much time here. Lucindo's going to be my pick pretty comfortably. I think there's a significant striking advantage for Lucindo. I think if Juliana Miller was able to outland Brogan Walker almost 2-1, I can only imagine what Yasmin Lucindo will do. On the flip side, we're going to have to see how the ground exchanges go. Again, I don't think Brogan Walker has that takedown strategy in her. But she's coming down in weight. She can be the stronger girl here. But again, I don't think she just has that strategy in her. And I think Lucindo is going to be more than comfortable in that area to fend off takedowns if Brogan Walker goes for it. I think this one stays on the feet, and I think that Lucindo wins pretty convincingly. So Yasmin Lucindo is going to be my pick.
Yeah, Lucindo all day in this spot. I think she's better everywhere as well. I'll be quick on this one. Four of her losses that she received was when she was 17 years old or younger. So she's 21 now. She has some experience under her belt. I like her in this spot, man. She's gonna be the better striker, but more importantly, I think she's gonna be able to dictate the grappling. She's a really good grappler, and I think it's up to her what she wants to do. So I see her winning how she wants. So Lucindo is my pick here to get the win.
Fight number 3, let's talk Bobby Green versus Jared Gordon. Lightweight fight here. Bobby Green lost to Drew Dober in December. He was doing pretty well in that fight till he got knocked out. Pretty dynamic in the stand-up. He's going to keep his hands down. He's going to rely on his speed, going to rely on his reflexes in terms of his striking defense. It works effectively for him, at least up until that Drew Dober fight. Good hand speed, good jab, likes that front kick, likes to move around the ring, likes to keep his opponents at distance. He's going to have a 3-inch reach advantage in this one, just 1 inch in height, although probably more when they stand next to each other. Again, like I said, likes that front kick, likes to move around the ring, likes to keep his opponents at distance, going to look for those counter punch opportunities. Don't sleep on his wrestling either. I know it's not an active part of his game. He doesn't use it too often, but he can definitely land it, and he's definitely well-versed down there as well. We saw some exchanges even in that Drew Dober fight that sort of showed his wrestling prowess. Jared Gordon, on the other hand, he had that controversial loss to Paddy Pimblett in December. Pretty controlled in the stand-up, not the quickest, not the best movement, but the stand-up is decent. It's consistent. He's best when he's coming forward. Decent striking defense. He is going to pick his shots well, like we saw in his last fight. He landed, several clean shots on Pimblett. Decent ground game to go along with that. BJJ brown belt the last time I checked, but also good at finding takedowns, right? Almost or over 2 takedowns per fight. Decent top control. But one thing with him is that his takedown defense is not the best, and that could be relevant here. Bobby Green should be good in this one. I don't think Gordon is not fighting a Paddy Pimblett type of striker, right? So I don't see Gordon finding those same opportunities like he did in his last fight. Green, like I mentioned, is going to have the height advantage, is going to have the reach advantage. And I think with the way that Green fights, those are going to be important factors for him. I don't think that Gordon will be able to take him down either. Green should be physically stronger, should be able to keep it on the feet. He's the quicker striker. He's the more diverse striker. And Gordon has been knocked out in most of his losses. So I can see Bobby Green potentially landing that knockout as well. But knockout aside, Bobby Green by jab, right? I think he can really be the more effective striker throughout this entire fight. Better movement, quicker, more diverse, more dynamic, more power, physically stronger. Bobby Green is going to be my pick.
Yeah, this should be an exciting fight. Jared Gordon definitely won that Paddy fight. We both lost that night. Jared, I had him winning that fight. I picked him pre-fight, and he got robbed by the judges. He was vocal about getting ripped off as well at the press conference. This could be punishment by the UFC for slandering their boy, man, or pretty much doing his job, making Paddy Pimblett look very, very beatable, and shooting down that big hype train that they had there. They gave Jared Gordon Bobby Green. That's a tough fight for him because Jared's going to need to get this to the mat. The striking is not going to be close. And Bobby Green has underrated wrestling. Unless you're a high-level wrestler, you're not taking Bobby Green down. Jared Gordon has good wrestling. He comes from a wrestling background. But Bobby Green has enough takedown defense to stop that style. Bobby Green all day here, keep it on the feet. If he doesn't, as long as he doesn't get arrogant and cocky in there and shows off and plays to the crowd, if he just goes in there and fights, he wins. So I like Bobby Green here to get it done.
Co-main event, let's talk Brad Tavares versus Bruno Silva. A good middleweight fight here. Brad Tavares had that unanimous decision loss to Dricus du Plessis back in July. Solid stand-up, good boxing, good kickboxing. The technique is pretty consistent. He makes good decisions. He's pretty patient, pretty poised, sets up his shots really well as well. Just IQ overall, right? That the ground IQ is there. although it's not an overwhelming part of his game, less than a takedown per fight. Good takedown defense, especially good takedown defense, but I don't think that'll be relevant in this one. More than likely not relevant. Expect Tavares to keep it on the feet, again, consistent, including that cardio. I think that's the key word when it comes to Tavares, just solid overall and consistent. Bruno Silva is on a 2-fight losing streak after losing to Gerald Meerschaert back in August. Bruno Silva is a striker, switch stance fighter. Expect him to put forward pressure on his opponents. Really likes to control center, almost kind of stalk his opponents down. Really dynamic in the striking. He's going to look to land that big, powerful punch or big, powerful kick when he can. He swings big, he misses big sometimes. One thing I noticed with Bruno Silva, the hands are not the cleanest, right? But the kicks are pretty crisp. He has good takedowns, although he hasn't shown it in the UFC. Just 2 takedowns in 5 UFC fights thus far. All of those, or both of those takedowns, were in just 1 fight. So don't really expect him to resort to that. Outside of the UFC, though, I have seen good ground and pound from him. He is a BJJ black belt as well, even though he was submitted in his last fight. So let's just expect the striking from Bruno Silva, and let's expect the striking from both of these fighters. It's not an easy fight, but I do think that Tavares is the smarter pick in this situation. And the reason why I think that, you look at Bruno Silva's last fight, he was outstruck by Gerald Meerschaert. That kind of tells you everything you need to know, right? Both of these guys are considered good strikers, but where I'd give the edge to Tavares is with that boxing specifically. Silva just doesn't have good boxing at all, whereas Tavares' boxing is pretty consistent. Again, going back to that key word with Brad Tavares. Silva hasn't really shown us that takedown approach to his game in the UFC thus far. Plus, Brad Tavares has good takedown defense, so I don't think that all of a sudden becomes a factor for Bruno Silva in this fight. Bruno Silva has that KO opportunity, of course, or he also has the opportunity to just land the bigger shot throughout the fight, the way that Dricus du Plessis was able to over Brad Tavares. But in terms of pure striking advantage that I believe that Tavares has, and after seeing Bruno Silva get outstruck by Gerald Meerschaert, I have to think that Brad Tavares is the smarter pick here. So I'm going to go with Brad Tavares. I'm going to recognize the threats that exist in this fight. Bruno Silva can pretty much do what du Plessis did, but I think the difference is that Silva just doesn't really have the hands to make that happen, whereas Brad Tavares is pretty solid and consistent all around. So I think it is Tavares' consistency that will get it done here. I don't know. Bruno Silva really disappointed me in his last fight, and I don't think he turns it around in this one.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, man. You made a lot of good points on this fight. Bruno Silva is going to have that puncher's chance. He's going to have to land that good shot because Tavares, I think, has the better cardio. I think Tavares is the more well-rounded guy. I think he's the better MMA fighter, and he's going to be able to move around. He has really, really good boxing counters as well. And I think in this fight, he's going to go to the takedowns. I actually believe it. When you look at Tavares recently, he doesn't really go for takedowns, but that's fighting guys like Dricus du Plessis, fighting guys like Omari Akhmedov. He's not getting takedowns. Antonio Carlos Jr. These are grapplers, right? And then when he fought Israel Adesanya, he got 1 takedown. Shabazian, the fight didn't last long enough. He got finished. He got caught. But against fighters that he can get takedowns, he's going for takedowns. And you got to go far back. Lorenz Larkin, he got 2 takedowns in that fight. Against Tom Watson, he got 5 takedowns. Against Dong, how do we know this guy? Dong Yi Yang, he got 2 takedowns, right? So, and against Seth Baczynski, he got 3 takedowns. So I think if the takedowns are there, which I think they will be, I think he's going to go that route. Tire out Bruno Silva, let this go 3 rounds, and I see Tavares just doing enough on the feet to win the striking, and then having that takedown in his back pocket. So I like Brad Tavares. Avoid the danger. If he doesn't get knocked out, I don't see him losing a decision in this fight. So I'm going to go Brad Tavares to get the win.
All right, now let's talk main event in that case. We have Sergei Pavlovich versus Curtis Blaydes. Heavyweight fight, dangerous fight, top-level contenders here. Pavlovich is on a 5-fight winning streak after beating Tai Tuivasa. Really clean hands, really dangerous, big right hand. He's essentially a boxer. Don't really see any kicks from him. Decent movement. The footwork is there. Overall, he moves well as a heavyweight. Jab, good stiff jab, big power. 14 of his 17 wins are via KO, TKO, including his last few. And the activity is solid as well. So he's going to stay in front of you. He wants to exchange, but also he's going to stay right out of your range defensively with a lot of fakes. Use the reach advantage that he has against a lot of people in his fights as well. And let's see what he does against Curtis Blaydes, who beat Tom Aspinall technically. If you remember, Aspinall blew his knee out early in that fight, but nonetheless, TKO victory for Curtis Blaydes, and now we're looking at 3 wins in a row. Of course, we know Blaydes is a wrestling specialist. We know that he can get fighters to the ground at will. The wrestling is always going to be his strongest attribute, no matter what. On the feet, improving, a lot of fakes and feints. The level changes are especially effective for him because the wrestling threat that he is. Good in and out movement as well. He's also pretty light on his feet. He also moves pretty well as a heavyweight. And like I said, it's definitely an area of his game that he continues to improve, over the course of his career and even to this day. This is a tricky fight. I actually did not expect Curtis Blaydes to be the favorite in this one. I thought it would be Sergei Pavlovich. So interesting to see Pavlovich as the underdog. I understand it though. I think this could be a round 1 or bust type of scenario for Sergei Pavlovich. Pavlovich, of course, since he's come off that 3-year layoff in 2022, he had 3 fights in the UFC since that time. And all 3 of those fights have been round 1 finishes. So we don't really know what this version of Pavlovich looks like in a 3-round fight, never mind a 5-round main event, right? Curtis Blaydes, of course, has been here before. I think that's probably the biggest component to him being the favorite. We know that Curtis Blaydes takes down pretty much everyone, right? So I don't see him necessarily having an issue against Pavlovich if placed in that situation. Of course, the question is going to be, will he even get that opportunity? That's really the storyline for this fight. I think there's a legitimate value on Curtis Blaydes, and he's almost the smarter pick in this situation just based on the advantages that he has. But I'll be honest, I can't do it, right? Pavlovich has been going crazy. He's been knocking out some big names. And Tai Tuivasa, Derek Lewis. And even though it's guys who want to strike, it's been Pavlovich putting that immediate pressure on them, hurting his opponents immediately as soon as he connects. And with Pavlovich's boxing stance, I think that's going to keep him a little bit more grounded. Blaydes is not going to be able to swipe at a leg and land the takedown, for example. I think Pavlovich is going to be a bit more grounded, a bit better prepared, with that movement, with that range advantage that he has as well, to stay out of takedown range from Curtis Blaydes. 4 inches in reach is going to be super key for him. And like I mentioned, I think this fight, maybe round 1 or bust. I think the fight becomes a round 1 situation for Pavlovich. In a lot of ways, I'm seeing a repeat of what happened in his fight against Tai Tuivasa, where he just goes for it. We know Blaydes has improved striking, so Blaydes might test, a few seconds, and as soon as Pavlovich lands, it's over. And the reason why I say that, if you watch Blaydes fight versus Aspinall for as short as it lasted, it was that exact same thing, right? Within the first 15 seconds, I think Curtis Blaydes was ready to not necessarily hit the cage, but he was being backed up a little bit before Aspinall just blew the knee out. So if Aspinall can do that, I can imagine Pavlovich can do that, and I can imagine Pavlovich lands that punch, hurts Curtis Blaydes, and gets him out of there early. So essentially, I'm betting on the round 1 in the round 1 or bust type of situation. I think Pavlovich gets the win here.
Yeah, this is a crazy fight, man. I'm really looking forward to this one. Pavlovich, we know he's gonna have that striking, that deadly striking in this fight. He's gonna have a big advantage in the striking area, the really good counters, really good power. The wrestling, that's gonna be the question. That's a big question in this fight. because they say, I was reading, Pavlovich has been training, what was it, Sambo or wrestling since the age of Greco. He was training Greco-Roman wrestling since the age of 5. And then he switched over to Sambo, I guess, before he turned a teenager. So he has that wrestling in his back pocket it should be there to defend some takedowns. He was taken down by Overeem, but it was more of a trip. Caught him off guard. Yeah, Overeem was throwing some knees and then caught him off guard, caught him off balance, and he tripped him. It wasn't a legit takedown. So we really don't know how good his takedowns are at the UFC level. We're gonna find out Saturday though, against probably the best wrestler in this entire division, and that's including John Jones. Blaydes is legit with the wrestling. He good single legs. He even does spears like the Goldberg move. He does that. Like he just throws himself into you, and he has that explosiveness to just take you down. Really good wrestling, and that's something we're going to find out if he can get this to the mat. If he gets it to the mat against Overeem, Pavlovich didn't look really good off his back. I'm not sure if he gave up. It was his first fight, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. A lot of times the first fight is it's hard in your first fight, being on the big stage. When I look at Pavlovich, though, I'm not sure because I don't want to be a hater, but because he might knock out Curtis Blaydes. Because again, Curtis Blaydes has been hurt by Mark Hunt. He almost got knocked out in that fight. He got knocked out against Derek Lewis. He got pummeled by Nagano. So he definitely has issues with that chin. Like Mark Hunt almost got that finish. Well, when I look at Pavlovich, man, I'm not sure because I think he's been kind of groomed. Like they gave him over him. They thought he was going to win that fight. They thought he was going to get over him, but obviously he lost that fight. But after that, he beat Marcelo Gomes first round, Maurice Green first round, Shamil Abdurakhimov first round, and his best wins are Tai Tuivasa and Derek Lewis. 2 guys that are just they're tough guys, heavy hands, barroom type of fighters, not that skilled, not that technical, really reckless. And those are his 2 best wins. Pre-UFC, he doesn't really have a signature win. So I'm not really sure, man. This guy, again, he could come out here and knock out Blaydes, but based on what's on paper, what's in front of me, yeah, he's looking good in those fights in UFC. He's knocking guys out in the first round. That means he has good power. And that means that he's able to keep the fight in his range. He's able to dictate the fight that way, that he's keeping it standing. Even if there's no takedown attempts, he's keeping it where he wants it. Now he's fighting a guy that could take it where he wants it. And I think Blaydes is going to be able to take down Pavlovich. I think Blaydes is smart. I think he's just going to go for the takedown. My issue with Blaydes is, unlike Overeem, who's going to pound you when he's on top, Blaydes sometimes lays in praise. He kind of he doesn't really throw the strongest strikes. But then when you watch his fight against Overeem, when he threw that elbow in the ground, it was really dangerous. So he does have those tools that I think he could use here. So I'm going to go with the favorite here, Curtis Blaydes. I was leaning Pavlovich, but the more I thought about it, the more I looked into what Blaydes is going to try to do here. Will he be able to get the takedowns? Even in the striking, Blaydes is getting better. So I think Blaydes can get it done. Use some wrestling, get this to the mat, and get the win.
All right, let's go Vegas at this point. And let's take a look at, of course, some underdog picks first, as well as some parlay action. And in terms of underdogs, I will read them out as they currently stand. There are a lot of close fights on here. So Brady Hiestand is a dog. Priscila Cachoeira is a dog. William Gomis, Mohammed Usman, Karol Rosa, Rani Yahya, Christos, Giagos, Jeremiah Wells, and Semelsberger is a pick'em, so we will consider either fighter to be the underdog there. Brogan Walker, Jared Gordon, Bruno Silva, and Sergei Pavlovich.
All right, I'm going to go with William Gomis.
William Gomis, good value there, 2.75. My underdog pick, I mean, I got to go to the main event, of course, making a big call there with Sergei Pavlovich. And I'm going to double down with him being my underdog pick as well. Now, in terms of parlay action, favorite picks. Who are you considering?
I'll go right after you. I'm actually doing mine right now.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So, few fights I'm looking at for the viewers. As you saw me switch to the screen, you probably got a preview of who I was considering. I'm looking at Jasmine Lucindo. I'm looking at Bobby Green. I'm looking at Montel Jackson. This is not the highest paying ticket, but UFC has been very tough these past few weeks. So I'm looking to win, not necessarily looking to earn. Those three fights is going to be a 2.06. That means $100 will get you $206, and for our bigger betters, $250 is going to get you 517.
Okay, I'm gonna go with you on Bobby Green and Lucindo, and I'm gonna throw in there Curtis Blaydes.
Curtis Blaydes, there you go, main event action. So that'll be a 2.78. $100 will return 278, and for our bigger betters, $250 will return 696. So let's sign off on that note. Of course, this has been UFC Fight Night. Sergei Pavlovich versus Curtis Blaydes, your full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. If you have not done so already, please make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. That definitely helps us a lot and we would appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. Spread the word as well. And most importantly, we want to hear from you in the comments. So how do you feel about our picks? Who is your underdog? Who is on your main ticket? What fights do you want maybe additional insights on? Maybe some props that you're potentially considering? Let that all be known in the comments. We're more than happy to have that conversation with you. But again, officially signing off, UFC Fight Night, Sergei Pavlovich versus Curtis Blaydes. He goes by Zan. I go by Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks. And in our usual fashion, let's get this money.
Let's get it.